a couple of supplements up here. We're going to be cross-referencing the supplements with herbs. We're talking about mitochondrial health. I know you guys always hear me talk about how to protect your mitochondrial health, how to protect your DNA. And there is a specific way and specific herbs. I got my top 4 phytochemicals that's going to help us fortify our immune system and also protect our DNA. So what is our mitochondria? You always hear this name. I don't know if you guys actually had a chance to look up the mitochondria, see what it is, but I did place a animation on the Institute page, so you can go down, stroll down, and see the actual what's going on in this organelle. So every eukaryotic cell has an organelle called the mitochondria. This is basically the powerhouse, or the nuclear power plant, as they say, of the cell. So it's found in the cytoplasm of the cell, and its main role and most important role is for cell respiration and for energy production. And this is where all of your metabolism comes from. This is where the first part of life actually starts. So it's very, very important that we know specific triggers on how this works. When we eat carbohydrates or fats, they have to go through a cycle called the citric cycle, or what they call the Krebs cycle. And they break down these carbohydrates into pyruvates, and that takes a couple of enzymes to break it down even further using coenzyme A's. And you can look up the citric cycle. We talked about a lot of that in our Power of Lemons class, but it has to go through the mitochondria and where that happens at. And this is where all of our energy, this is our energy system. So I want us to always think about our system as being like a car. All right, we can't just run off of gas alone. We have to have coolant, we have to have oil, we have to have transmission fluid. And the mitochondria has all of these little things inside of it, like the ribosomes. It can make its own DNA. This is the place where our DNA is actually being stored. So we've already talked a lot about how DNA can become folded, misfolded, and doing heat shock proteins. But this actually happens within the cytoplasm. And I drew up this little structure, and you can also look on your worksheets. But if you can zoom in a little bit, just so they can see this matrix that's inside of here. Our DNA is found right inside the mitochondrial matrix. Okay, so we also have what they call a outer membrane space, and we are trying not to penetrate this. We want to keep this protected as much as possible. Before you can get to the actual DNA of the mitochondrial matrix, you have to go through the cristae, which are these misfoldings up in this area here. And this is where you can actually get its nutrients from. It happens on that membrane. So the electron transport chain carries all of the ATP, and this is where ATP is being made within the cristae of that inner membrane. Let me make sure that you guys can see what's going on right up in that area. Alright, so in red up there I have the actual DNA. So this is where the misfolding actually occurs. They can produce their own DNA. So there's a mitochondrial RNA in this section. Alright, and there's also, let me out up here. It creates little ribosomes. These are the little ribosomes. And they can produce their own DNA in that section. This is our DNA here. Alright, make sure you guys can see that. So we're trying to protect this as much as possible. This takes a lot of different amino acids. So we're talking about, say for instance, we're talking about thiol groups. And that has a lot to do with cysteine, methionine, you got glycine, guanine. All of those happen to be within that protein structure and making of that DNA. All right, so it has phospholipids that are around the outer membrane space. This is a bilayer that we don't want this area to become penetrated. Now, the reason why I'm talking about the effects and everything that could happen, just say for instance, what's going on right now with the virus. Just say for instance, what's going on right now with the virus is it can penetrate our cytoplasm. All right, just for any other type of virus that's out there or things that are trying to, even with the 5G, if we're trying to be tethered when we already have nanoparticles outside in the air, these nanoparticles can actually bind on to our genetic material. So biogenetics is what we're trying to protect, and the DNA is what they want. They want to be able to control our DNA. If that happens, then you can control certain thoughts and everything that way. So DNA is very, very important to protect. So why should we protect our DNA? It's our energy system. It's our powerhouse. I want you guys to think about interfacing. Now I'm just talking like this computer language because there's a lot of things that's going on with vaccines. We got chips. We got nanoparticles from the chemtrails. So these things are working with our biogenetics. All right, and that's a next level type of thing because we're already moving into this next shift. All right, so mitochondrial health is something that we want to protect by using certain things. So I wrote up 7 different effects that the mitochondria goes through. It can really be damaged or influenced by stressors. So we're talking about like oxidative stress. Oxidative stresses like cell damage from our environment, the pollution, the air quality, the toxicity that's in the air, the chemicals, the pharmaceuticals. All those things can create cellular damage. And we need cellular respiration. We need it for metabolism. We need it for cell division. We need it for cell differentiation, cell development, everything. These things can definitely influence toxicity or damage to it. So drugs, alcohol, all of that. So those things are things that damage the mitochondria. I put up here also proteins. We have to make sure that we're getting good proteins. Our last class, I said that we can change the way genes are expressed by having more proteins. The nuts and seeds are there to build up our proteins, and it helps build up glutathione. Now, glutathione is produced by cysteine. It's produced by high sulfur-containing foods like broccoli, kale, spinach, and you also have the nuts and seeds and the beans and lentils. So glutathione is our master antioxidant. It can produce something called superoxide dismutase. We want that to happen because we can build up our immunity that way. So the proteins makes our bones stronger. Remember, it builds up collagen. If we get enough amino acids like the glycine, proline, and cysteine, those help build up that stronger bone. So more proteins, more proteins. Then I put up here antioxidants because they go hand in hand with the proteins as well. But in another form that we want to make sure that we're having is the alpha lipoic acid. This is a very strong fatty acid. All right, we get it from wheat germ oil. Did I put up here a wheat germ oil? I'm always talking about wheat germ oil because it has a lot of different fatty acids in there, like oleic acid, alpha lipoic acid. It also carries magnesium, which is the next antioxidant we can talk about. But I'm trying to show you guys ways that we can support our mitochondria and protect it as well. But this has a lot to do with the energy because alpha lipoic acid increases our energy in the cell, and so does CoQ10. We know that CoQ10 is involved in this inner membrane space up here. So this inner membrane space is where all of the ATP is actually happening. So ubiquinol is another name for CoQ10. All right, so they use the Q within that complex 2 in the electron transport chain. All right, our next one is magnesium. I talked about magnesium because it is involved in a lot of the enzymes that are needed to get into the actual mitochondria. The more magnesium that we have, the more mitochondria that we can produce. So that means that we don't necessarily have to have one mitochondria per cell. Remember that these mitochondria are in muscle cells, organ cells, tissues. They're not in our erythrocytes, which are red blood cells. You can find them in our white blood cells. You can find them near osteocytes. A lot of the magnesium has a lot to do with what they call calcium signaling. Calcium signaling has a lot to do with how osteocytes communicate with erythrocytes. And these tell the cell whether or not they can absorb calcium or release calcium. So magnesium is very, very important. We have to make sure that we're using what I call chelated magnesium. All right, the chelated magnesium can get into the cell. The chelation actually part means it can hijack onto other enzymes and actually go into the cell. So we need it because the mitochondria can copy its own genome. It can actually create more of the mitochondria. And we don't want to overwork our mitochondria if it only has one. One good way that we can make sure, guys, that we have enough mitochondria and actually are producing and making it copy itself. These are transcription factors on how it actually copies itself. We need to do high intensity exercises. So make sure that's a part of your everyday, or at least I would say 80% nutrition, 20% exercise. So 20% of your week needs to be at least high intensity exercises. All right, so the next one I have here is healthy fats. I'm always stressing about fats. We talked about the wheat germ oil being a fat. We talked about coconut oil, avocados, olive oils. You can just eat the olives and just get all of this good fat, but we know that the fat is creating something called ketones, ketone production. Now, when we were doing water fasting, I asked you guys to do the fat-soluble drink so that we can start to produce more ketones. All right, so they provide the anti-inflammatory support. We know that fats have certain ways they can be penetrated or oxidized, I would say, based on light hitting that fatty acid. But when you have coconut oil and these high dense oils like avocado oils, they won't be able to penetrate as fast or oxidize as fast. So that's why we need these healthy fats to help wash away some of the degradation that's going on into the DNA. So as you can tell, this is all connected. We've done water fasting. We talked about neurochemistry. We talked about a lot of these different things, that everything seems to connect right now when we're talking about intercellular waste, metabolism. Know that all cells going to poop, all cells going to breathe. That's how they work. So detoxification is important. They're very, very sensitive to toxins and chemicals. So it's easy for the mitochondria to become compromised. All right. So whenever there's inflammation, it starts to get out of control. The mitochondria will have some dysfunctions. So you'll see different symptoms pop up. And I know that we should be studying in this course. This is mostly about chemistry and herbs. So I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on talking about the chemistry, but on up here, this is a flavanol. This is a flavanol. And I picked 4 different flavanols, which are phytochemicals that can be found in all of our plants. So I kind of want to focus now on the plants. That's going to really help us out. All right. So there are 4 phytochemicals that I want to make sure that we have. But before I get there, macronutrients and micronutrients are very important. I want to make sure that everybody's getting the right. We got to make sure we get the right proteins and all those things. But these micronutrients, a lot of people kind of overlook. Now, selenium and magnesium. I mean, not magnesium, but manganese. Now, manganese is a trace mineral just like selenium is a trace mineral, but they are needed for our immune function. They are needed for our immune function. They're needed for the mitochondria. And they really do support producing superoxide dismutase, and they were calling them manganese superoxide dismutase, and they produce glutathione as well. Something I wanted to bring up about manganese, because I use this specific formula, manganese with zinc, really helps the mitochondria when it comes to metabolizing carbohydrates and lipids. Like for the person that has diabetes, and I'm talking about type 1, because they have no control over the insulin secretion, this helps them build up and build more control when you use manganese and zinc. It normalizes what they call the synthesis of how it's being produced in the pancreas. So if you know a type 1 diabetic, this will be a good method to help them out. Yeah, so it's a lot of things about manganese. You guys can do a further more research on it. But selenium helps get rid of a lot of infections. I found that selenium, a lot of viral conditions can be healed just by using selenium and vitamin C. So not having deficiencies. If you don't have any deficiencies, you're actually helping that mitochondria. So make sure that you include, vitamin C, E, B, and iron to support that mitochondria. All right. So as far as the herbs. Now, myricetin. If we were talking about these flavonoids up here, these are functions. When we're talking about phytochemicals, I don't want you to confuse phytochemicals with minerals. They all have minerals. So phytochemicals have minerals and vitamins, and they have specific functions and properties as well. So they come with a lot of benefits. So if I was talking about myricetin, it blocks aromatase. I'm not going to guess and ask anyone if they know what aromatase is, but it's an enzyme that blocks, basically converts over testosterone into estrogen. And when that happens, that means that the person is having a hard time with breast cancer, prostate cancer. When that turns into estrogen, then we got an estrogen dominant situation. So we need myricetin for that purpose. And you can find myricetin in a lot of different dark leafy green vegetables. And one particular herb I would say use is stinging nettle. Now I'm going to do some cross-referencing right now so that you can see what's going on. We may use stinging nettle. And the other dark green leafy vegetables like kale or collard greens or any type of chlorella, they will have myricetin as well. It also inhibits PDE inflammatory responses. This means that all the inflammatory markers that are made from prostaglandins going down a COX-2 or TNF-alpha pathway, you can be able to inhibit that response. Now, that also happens to be in a lot of green leafy vegetables. You'll find that arugula, a lot of those type of vegetables would be good. Now, it's also an antioxidant. So that means that it can bring harmony to those cancer cells, allow them to create apoptosis, and myricetin also does a lot with preventing blood clotting. So you can use nettle to prevent blood clotting. You can use nettle also to build up iron. So know that these phytochemicals also have minerals in it. It also has magnesium and all the rest of those. I will be able to, I put up here a couple other things. Myricetin also is involved in berries, cabbage. So let me put the berries. And some of these phytochemicals are also, they have more than one phytochemicals. Like you'll find a lot of vegetables that also have kaempferol, this is kaempferol. These two are found in a lot of the green leafy vegetables. Now I put up another one here, ginkgo. The ginkgo biloba has kaempferol and myricetin in it. So obviously, if something's going to affect the brain and circulation and your blood, these are really good for protecting the mitochondria, because we have white blood cells in our blood. We have all of these different hormones that's flowing through our blood. These can help, because nettle also, it blocks aromatase. You'll find these in a lot of seeds too, nuts and seeds like pumpkin seeds, definitely pumpkin seeds. So I'm giving you guys ways that you can kind of figure out how things are going based on the property of the phytochemical. All right, so, and then you can still be able to have the benefit of the vitamins and the minerals at the same time. You can also find kaempferol and myricetin in grapes. So the seeds of the grapes, the grape skin, all of the polyphenols, that also is a flavonoid. You see, they can be in different categories, but at the same time, still within their phytochemical group. We did a good class, I would say about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, on phytochemistry, on the colors of everything, on how proanthocyanins and grapes, like if you were to get some grapeseed oil and make grapeseed oil, I was going to show a demonstration of just me eating all the grapes, the purple grapes with the seeds in it, and I was going to dehydrate those grapes skin and the seed, and then turn it into a powder and then put it into the oil. That's how you would make grapeseed oil. Or you can just use the grapeseed extract. But it definitely will have kaempferol. It will also have another resveratrol, which is another type of phytochemical. Kaempferol also has green tea. So just say, for instance, green tea has a lot of phytochemicals in it. It has catechin. So catechin, kaempferol, myricetin. Green tea is also good for fighting cancer. So we can see that it helps induce apoptosis here. It will reduce inflammation. It prevents oxidative stress. All of those different things you can find just in those kaempferol. Man, I just gave you another one. I called it catechin. Catechin helps you lose weight. So we know green tea is another form of helping you lose weight. You guys can look up catechin. Maybe want to spell it for you. I'll spell it for you. That's another phytochemical that helps you lose weight, and it's found in green tea. Theanine theanine is found in green tea, and it helps you keep focus. So if it happens to work with the brain, it's also going to help with the gut. So the brain and the gut pretty much works hand in hand, and you'll see that from the ginkgo. That's one of the brain nervines that we talked about as well. Next, I'm going to go ahead and talk about quercetin. We talked about quercetin a lot when we were combining it with nitrogenine. Nitrogenine found in grapefruit, found in lemons. We had a power of lemons class and a grapefruit class. And you can find quercetin with those two all the time. They kind of act hand in hand. They work with the endothelium function, meaning that they can stop you from having high blood pressure. So you can also find onions. Right down. I'll put it over here. Onions and garlic is in that family. So quercetin, you'll find also neem. If you were looking for a new herb to use, or neem oil or neem leaf, you'll find quercetin in there. So what does quercetin, what else does it do? It helps protect the nitric oxide. It helps protect the vasodilators. So neem is a good blood purifier. Onions and garlic helps produce the nitric oxide and protects the vasodilation. It also stops high cholesterol, your low density lipoproteins, and it reduces the inflammation. So these are all the things that you need to help protect that endothelial lining, and we know that that's every part of our vessels, all of our vessels. And you can also find quercetin in blueberries. All right, you can find it in olive oil and broccoli. I would say always use a red onion. A red onion would be the best. All right, let's go into apigenin. This is our last one. I didn't want to make the class too long, but apigenin helps decrease the cytokines. Helps decrease the cytokines. These are found in our mast cells, which is the first layer of defense under our skin, the epithelial lining. So apigenin is found in oats. I would prefer everyone to have steel cut oats. Don't do the grain type oats that are made by Quaker and all those, but do the steel cut oats if you do. You're trying to decrease inflammatory messengers. Also, apigenin is a phytochemical that blocks cortisol. Alright, so cortisol is our stress hormone. So I would like to use certain herbs, the chamomile. Now, I'm not saying that this could be the number one herb. I'm giving you something, a phytochemical that also can block cortisol, has apigenin in it, and can also block the cytokine storms. So chamomile calms down cortisol. Also, you can use things that calm down other inflammatory messengers, like say for instance there was a rheumatoid arthritis person that has inflammatory messengers, high cortisol levels. They would want to use things like celery, the celery leaves. You can use parsley. Parsley would be good. And they definitely have a lot of apigenin in it. Cilantro. So another thing that apigenin does, let me write this up here because I did not write it up here, is it's a good chelator. It's a chelator, guys.
Cleanser.
It chelates certain metals. So this is another way to chelate metals. You can use the cilantro, parsley, celery, and it all has apigenin in it, and it can also get rid of heavy metals. So this is a family of flavonoids. We can associate with certain polyphenols. All right, we can co-associate that with antioxidants and proteins. Now the mitochondria can replicate many times. We want to make sure that it's efficient. Proper detoxification is needed. You know, that's the reason why we do the total detox program and we do fasting protocols, because we want to make sure that the mitochondria can release misfolded, unfolded proteins, so it can start to copy its own genome again. So this is a process. It's always ongoing. You want to get rid of old cells. It can create apoptosis on itself. So once it gets damaged, you don't want to stick around and create a tumor cell, because that's what they do. If it sticks around and doesn't go through autophagy, it's going to create a tumor cell, a cancer cell. So we want proper detoxification at all times. So I have the garlic powder right here. Always do your garlic. I'm saying that because we know, you know, I love garlic. I don't have to explain that anymore. But also N-acetylcysteine. N-acetylcysteine is another way that we can build up glutathione. All right. It's definitely another antioxidant we can use. What else do we have? Selenium and chelated manganese. I still have the chelated manganese here. Proper dosaging of all of these things. You know, you got the water soluble vitamins. You know, your vitamin C is water soluble. Chelation usually goes good with fat, so take those with fat. I had oat straw up here, celery seed, nettle, and ginkgo biloba. So these are ways we can protect our mitochondria, people. All right, students. Well, not seeing a lot of questions there, but I hope that everyone understands how to cross-reference these herbs. All right. You can always ask me questions in the group. I'm going to be testing you on certain things. We've learned 4 main phytochemicals that we need to protect our mitochondria today. We learned about the macronutrients and the micronutrients, things that we must have in our system rather than just gas or oil. So I want to thank you guys for listening. So I give thanks. Shalom.